I'd like to welcome Jeff Stafford, Chief Marketing Officer from Darwin Automotive today to our AutoTech Effect speaking session. Jeff, thank you for being here. We'd like to learn more about digital retail platforms and what Darwin Automotive has done to impact our industry.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. When we talk about digital retailing, I think our journey at Darwin was a little different than most. I'm going to start off not talking about digital retailing at all, but we'll get back to digital retailing in a few. Our core as a company has always been, for decades, we're DMS integration company, F&I technology, presentation. So a couple things that we've done, our core competency very well over the years would be moving data, right, and making sure payments are accurate and they match, and they hopefully include F&I protection, which is obviously a big part of dealers' profit center. We kind of got pushed into digital retailing, which is interesting. I think what I was going to speak about a week ago changed from like 3 days ago to literally like a conversation that was happening yesterday. It's been very, very interesting to see digital retailing and what it's become, and the, Darwin, our name, kind of hints the whole evolution. And I think more so than anything these days, digital retailing is in a constant state of evolution. Last year at NADA, there's a lot of people that launched. Obviously, there was all the CRM companies, the Silicon Valley, the new companies that were, everybody was getting into digital retailing space. And at the time, it was, can we sell a car online, right? And I don't think many people stopped to like consider, well, do customers really want to buy cars online? It was, can we? It's cool. It's let's buy it now. It's, you can't have a conversation without mentioning Amazon. I'm sure I'll do it a few times, but there's always been a concern of, you don't want to be the Toys R Us, right? You got to be ahead of this, and you don't want to be on the wrong side of history, obviously, giving the customers the experience they want. So we rushed like anybody else when our dealers were saying, hey, listen, we want to do digital retailing, but we need payments that actually match what we're saying, right? And we need F&I to be a big part of that, and we need it personalized into what you're doing. So we started down the path, and for us, our F&I technology, one of the biggest differentiators has always been personalization, which is a big part of what a lot of companies are trying to do online, right? We need personalized experience. It's their car, it's their payment, it's their situation. So to backstep, in the F&I arena, the easiest way to explain it is we went from a 4-column paper, static, hey, everything's in the same order, to, you know what, sir, based on your previous purchase history and your equity and where you live and the cars that you're buying and all, literally over 80 different algorithms, we do a personalized experience for F&I. So we've taken that patented technology, we've embedded it in the digital retailing space, and over the last year, while there have been some changes and some customizations we've done with some of our stores, it's been really fun to see how that's progressed. So we say digital retailing, but now it's, that's a very small percentage. I think everybody agrees that customers that actually want to buy a car online. So to us, it's more about connecting that experience, right? So for a consumer, they don't care what you call it, they just want to have a good experience, right? They just want to spend less time in a store and they want to get the information they want. So for us, more of this focus over the last year has been, how do we give them exactly what they're looking for, what they're seeing online, and then making sure in store it's the exact same thing and it's as quick and as accurate as they want it to be.
I would say that one of the big questions we get in our industry is, how do we preserve income and F&I income and revenue related to the transaction? It is, we're seeing revenue contraction in each aspect of automotive retail. What would you share as an idea of moving an online retail platform to the dealership's control so that they can meet that consumer expectation?
So the first thing we do when we talk to dealers about this, because obviously it was one of their first concerns, which is why we got in the business, right? I'm not going to go online and sell cars without F&I revenue, or I'm not going to go online and sell cars, right? They're used to not making money on new cars, but now with profit margins shrinking on used cars, they really have to be careful and tread lightly. And I mean, there are some dealers that without the profitability they make in F&I, they'll be out of business, yeah. Right? I mean, some margins in certain situations are that thin. But the bright side is, in virtually every industry, customers will pay more for the experience that they want. That's right. Right? So you look, there's all kinds of statistics, and I have short-term memory loss, so what I did was I wrote down literally 100 statistics
That's okay.
here.
We'll
Only 2 of which I'll speak to. There's a couple zingers that I think everybody has heard. But I think we can all agree that in virtually any sense in any industry we participate in, we pay more for a service that we like.
That's right.
We pay more for luxury goods that we want, but we expect it to meet a certain level of experience, right? The expectation that consumers have when they're buying a Ferrari is different than when they're going in and buying, I'll mention a more affordable vehicle. So to us, it's really about driving that experience, and it's really about whatever that experience means to you. And what has really been cool in that respect is what I think is different in digital retailing than any of the other technology spaces we've been in is the competitors. They're actually, it's all kind of, it's more kumbaya-ish than most competition, right? It's like everybody trying to figure it out at the same time with the dealers.
Sure.
And the dealers are more understanding of, hey, we know nobody's really got this nailed, and we know it's going to be a constant moving target, but everybody's kind of working together to figure out how does that look, right? How does giving the customer that experience and then preparing more for, as customers do become more open to actually buying the car online, or more of them do. But the one thing I'd say when we talk about profitability, the deals that we're seeing, they're not any less profitable. I've seen statistics where people say you sell 3 times the amount of F&I protection when you do a digital retailing deal. We have not seen that, nor do I think that is possible or feasible. But I will tell you, it's not any less. And the customers that are getting through the process quicker with more information and more transparency, they're always going to be more satisfied, and they're always going to experience less buyer's remorse.
I think that's fantastic. One of the things as we brought our influencers together, it was to kind of really open the eyes of folks that are focused on their everyday in their automotive retail world, which is, it's very strategic and executable because they've been doing it for years and years and years. And when they're being asked now to contemplate the modern experience, that consumer experience, I can tell you that we've been looking outside of our industry to say, how are these consumer experiences translating in those businesses? And it's ironic. We looked at buying Apple products, right? Tried and true, very trusted product set. And we found statistics that emulate what you're saying in terms of take rates on protection products. So everybody knows what Apple Care is, Apple Care Plus is, right? So Apple, one of the highest quality branded technology platforms, they're seeing 55% of their consumers that trust that brand, they're electing coverage at checkout using the Apple Store, going into a retail institution. So very much so, I think people contemplate this is a value add for them. So I think, but it comes back to Apple does a great job at giving that soft consumer experience so they can come back and understand and make the transaction on their own terms. So that I think that definitely resonates. And I think to give some assurances to dealers as they start thinking about that, because I think the other thing, and this is the transitional question, the feedback that I get is income preservation, right? If you think about the retail platform for the people that are selling cars, and then obviously in the finance and insurance office, they want to preserve their own personal income, but the retail income that's related to that. How do you see bringing the F&I manager and that retail process further into the journey of digitization so that there is personal income preservation, but also still that ability to keep the revenue coming into the store and protecting the consumer experience?
There's a lot to talk about there. I think that definitely, my mind just automatically went to 3 different places. One, I think there's a misconception that, customers won't buy F&I protection unless somebody's there, like, beating them up constantly and getting through 7 no's in order to get them to move. We work with a handful of the top automotive groups in the country. And we had one of the automotive groups that started going to a one-touch type experience, right? And I think the number that they quoted was they felt it was over 30%, but of consumers they'll buy a service contract without anybody even talking to them, right? They're just customers that like service contracts. They understand, right? Every time you buy any type of technology at a Best Buy or wherever, it's would you like this for X amount of dollars. So, and that's without even concentrating or doing it the right way. Like we've always kind of been behind in our education online of giving them the data, giving them the prices, right? If, you know, in this conversation, we're talking about F&I in particular, it's always kind of been the, you know, put them in the F&I office and then have them make a decision to purchase thousands of dollars in F&I protection with minutes, right? And it's always been a pressure cooker. And it's why one of my favorite statistics that's horrific is less than 1% of customers like the existing retail process. Like that's like, it's insane to think about.
Yeah.
And that's been the way it is for a while, but we've always felt like, well, we have to do this in order to be profitable, and we have to have this segment, and it's absolutely wrong. We all know that have been in the industry long enough of the dealer groups that do it right and have been doing it right, and the customers for life, and you know, they do customers always right, and there's, unfortunately, most stores aren't there yet. So when we talk about educating customers online previous, I always ask people, like, wouldn't you want to have the information there? Like, we're all information hounds. We're all online doing research. Like, what do you think the downside is to explaining to them, here's the protection that they have? So at Darwin, our big deal this year is really, we call it F&I everywhere. It started at the core F&I menu where, you know, obviously we have to have in store, and then it got into digital retailing, right? And then we have a service menu. Anywhere a customer is going to touch your dealership, you should have your valuable protection that you're selling, right? So now we have a Darwin Direct where it sits on your website and customers can literally go on at 2 in the morning and buy your F&I protection, literally check out with PayPal, right? Or a 0% financing. And intelligent marketing now afterwards, because there's a certain percentage of customers that just won't buy F&I protection. We know that, right? Some are just fried from a 4-hour sales process and they just want to get in, and the kids are crying, right? But they will potentially sell themselves after the fact, especially if they're a loyal service customer. So now we have follow-up technology that's leading them back. And so again, I know this was a kind of a loaded answer, but we call it omni-channel retail, right? The idea is pretty simple. It's give the customers the information they want and then make it as easy as possible to buy from you. And if you can do that, you'll be profitable, right? Nobody's going to go down this journey and not make money on it, right? And the customers, they know that automotive dealers need to make money and need to be profitable to run a business. What they want is to feel like when they're leaving with their car, well, that was a good experience, right? It wasn't, I'm leaving after 4 hours and I feel beat up and I'm saying I'll never buy a car from there again, and I hate automotive, and I'm the 1%er that, or the 99%er that didn't enjoy the experience. So, but we feel, if done right, and we've seen this now, we've got some pretty good test use cases over the last year where dealers are going to figure it out, and they're going to be able to, I mean, ultimately they're going to be there. They're going to be there for a really long time. Right. They're not going to be replaced, but.
You mentioned the 4-hour experience. One of the surveys that we've been seeing data on speaks to the effect that of the perceived online retail platforms or systems that are out there, and there's a few of them out there in the marketplace, the consumer has a perception that they've actually started the transaction or have somewhat came deeper into the transaction, only to find themselves showing up at the dealership and then going through a traditional retail platform process, which is 4 hours long. You know, we're learning more and more about automotive retail customers that spend 7-8 hours online before they come into the store. What would you say to those companies that are emulating maybe a retail experience, but it truly is a lead generation? How would you kind of describe the difference between what you're delivering or what you've seen as a tangible retail platform versus maybe something that is perceived that way?
Permission to tell a personal story? Yes.
It's a fireside chat without the fire.
So this is kind of what fueled me wanting to do this digital retailing game. So my wife and I have 4 kids, leave a pretty busy life. When it was time to trade in her old Honda Odyssey, we knew we were going to get a new Odyssey because the new Odyssey had a vacuum cleaner in it, and we don't really need anything else other than that, right? So we did everything we needed to do online, and I'm not going to share any names of groups or anything, but suffice to say, like, when we get a babysitter for 4 kids, we want to get out and be efficient. So we were going to buy a car and go have dinner and go to the movies, and right. So we're doing everything, faxing them over the insurance, the driver's license, the whole deal. I'm going to come in and I'm going to buy the car, and we're going to be out of there. It was a 4-hour experience.
Yeah.
We were thrown, and it was a pretty, notable group that, I wouldn't have expected, but I got thrown back into, to your point, I expected one thing, and then they took me to the traditional, showroom up process, because I think these people were trained to, you don't skip the steps to sell.
That's right. That's right.
So you got to go in and log this in the CRM. So anyway, I'll spare the boring details, but suffice to say, it was a horrific experience that I have told this story to with friends and locals, that it's not what you think it is. So to us, that is the absolute most important thing here. You do not want a dealer's expectations to what digital retailing is. A lot of them think it's an internet lead provider, right? And the BDC managers and the internet managers and the general sales managers, they were trained over the years to say, all right, I'm plugging in this, and then how many leads did we get, and did we close a certain percentage? If not, okay, cancel it and move on to the next iLead, right? So there's no, where it's failing is the expectations are wrong, the commitment to the process is wrong, right? The training of expectations is wrong, and the innovators that were first there, they are the ones that are figuring out first. It's not easy for a lot of these stores to change, because there's a lot that has to change to make it work. But I will tell you, it is vitally important. You have to get back to that customers for life example, that initial, like, if you treat them happy, they could be buying from you for life, right? So it's not just this car deal, it's the F&I protection, it's the service revenue, it's the friends and family that they tell or don't tell. I have told people, you don't want to go there, right? And what is that going to ultimately cost this dealer group over the next 30 years? They have to think about that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm pretty passionate now just because I had that experience. So for Darwin, to answer your question, so we had an article written about us in December in Auto Success with something we did with the Q-Volley organization. And they were one of the first ones on our platform, and they were wanting to sell cars online. But they came to the realization very quickly that, you know what, that's not really the goal here. The goal is to, we're plugging in Darwin online, we've got Darwin in store, customer says yes, they're immediately in F&I and they're out. So we don't have go to the traditional, the CRM, the desking, does the desking push to this? Does it pull over to the menu? Are the payments still accurate? No, they're not. What happened? There's a fee, there was a product, there's, whatever. So you're backing it up. And that's why the customer's sitting there waiting to get into F&I, and at 30 minutes and CSI. And so for us, what's been really, really cool to see, and a lot of people ask, why is an F&I menu company getting into digital retailing? Again, it's not the normal path.
Sure.
It makes more sense for the website providers and the CRM companies and all that stuff. But when you consider the fact that front end needs to be connected to the back as quickly as possible, it really makes perfect sense. So, we've got, Vroom, Texas Cars Direct, like a lot of these bigger providers are using our application to connect front to back as quick as possible and get the customers out. And we're still, even though we're in thousands of stores, we still pride ourselves in being a young, agile, nimble company. So we don't pretend like we have it all figured out.
Right.
We're willing to, with the Q-Volleys and the larger groups, we're willing to go in there and say, okay, what do we need to customize?
Yeah.
What do we need to implement to make this better, especially when you start talking about one touch, right? Haggle free. They're going from what I can only visually describe as I'm used to selling you a car right here and the monitor's here, right? And you don't get to see what's happening here, and then you're negotiating, and I have to go up to the tower, and nobody wants to sit through that experience, but now it's completely open up the monitor, everybody sits together. Yes, what you're seeing here is what you saw out there. The customers are like, wow.
Yeah, transparency.
Who would have thought? The transparency, the honesty, call it whatever you want, but the ultimate thing is it's an experience, and we always have to remember that ultimately the customers are probably going to get their way. Yeah. Somebody's going to service the customers.
We're seeing a lot of word tracks around frictionless transactions, and I think what you described, utilizing the platform as a tool to bifurcate the traditional process. Because I think, again, you look outside and this is something that we've been doing, is looking outside our industry. General retail has created expedited purchase platforms. You can have it delivered to your house. You can just have it sitting in a box that you show up. You can just roll through the valet. They'll come out and put it in the back seat of your car. And it's everything from small household consumer goods to major purchases. I think that's a great example of just taking the process and creating a hybrid approach to it, because I always think about the old travel agent at AAA office. I remember I was growing up in Florida, and my grandparents used to take us to the AAA office, and they had 30 triptych advisors where they would make the flip maps. So that was GPS back then. But then they also had 20 travel agents, and you couldn't do anything in the 80s and 90s. If you wanted to go anywhere, you had to ask permission by the travel agent, who could book your flight and book your hotel. And nowadays, that industry's virtually gone. It's a boutique approach. And what I'm hopeful for is that these dialogues and these ideas of a hybrid approach will help the F&I industry transition, because we don't want them to become the next travel agent, as you would say, because at the end of the day, there is automation that could probably figure a good portion of it out, but I think the value prop of a quality presentation, transparent, genuine, empathetic, with less friction in the process, remove that 4 hours so you could go see that movie and go out to dinner that night. That would have been nice on that date night. I think that's really what we're witnessing, and the irony is, in the early 2000s, people were still trying to figure out this internet thing was going to work out in the automotive space, and then they waited till 02, 03 before digital dealer became this entire enigma of how do we sell using digital platforms. I think people are ready for this. What do you think in terms of timing? Because I know that's the one thing that we always get. Well, that's coming years from now. What do you think? How far out are we from really having to make these changes?
So I think that, and in the back of my mind, I still know that there are dealers that still step sell and never even migrated to like a menu, much less even get into automated. So
sure.
There's always going to be people that like stagger behind. Obviously, we know that. But actually, we just launched a buy it now technology for cash customers that a customer can buy it via Darwin Online, buy a vehicle, click of a button. So we're there with technology, but as far as like broad appeal and everybody kind of moving to where it becomes mainstream, I'd say pretty far off. I mean, the highest numbers I've seen are like 10, 11% of customers that would just buy it, right?
Completely online.
Yeah, without a test drive, without anything.
Sure.
But those are people that have been surveyed that didn't, it's not 11% have bought, it's people saying, yeah, I probably would, right?
Sure.
So maybe the real number is 4 or 5% right now. So what we feel is the best use of everybody's time is to really, at first, connect the experience. Like, don't build your model for, the 3% of customers that might buy it. Yes, get there. Everybody needs to get there. There's so much other things that we should be fixing before we try to do that, by and large, in most dealerships. Connecting that experience. Years ago, in a different life, I did a lot of front-end consulting, deal flow, right? That was the goal. It was the plugging in the front, the vAuto, the red bumper, to whatever CRM of choice they had, to whatever desking, to where it all, like, most dealers have a problem just doing that normal deal flow completely controlled in their environment, much less, can I start out at a website and then have everything done smoothly? So to me, it's not even worth considering, like, as a majority of people doing that, because to your point, they're always going to want to touch, they're always going to want a person. Like the 3D virtual reality is at the CES show in Vegas. Like, a lot of this stuff is really, really cool stuff, but it's not anything that we need to be preparing for in a large number today. I don't know if that answers the question or not.
No, I think that gives perspective. It's not going to happen overnight. Maybe it's a transition, or just like any other evolution. And Darwin has been part of evolution of this. It's very iconic and ironic with the name of your company, being Darwin. So I'd like to open up for some questions for Jeff.
So what does the future of the automotive retail space look like, and what role is Darwin going to play in that?
So I do think that everybody will be getting on board with that, and transparency is like the word of the year for sure. But I do think that because it's common sense, right? It's give the customer the experience that they're asking for. So I think that it's going to be a lot more one touch. It's going to be a lot more no haggle. I think it's going to be a lot more, the process in my store is the exact process that we show online, right? There's no reason not to have a consistent experience, the frictionless, all one situation. So to us, we will continue to try to bridge that as easily as possible. And you know, a lot of it is software companies trying to open up to talk to the other software companies, right? Because not every dealer is going to say, okay, I'm going to go with my DMS company and just take every application they have, right? They're going to say, I want this particular thing. I think that's best in class. It works for my process. So I think it's a lot of the software companies are going to have to start working more together, be a little bit more flexible. So with us, that may be more customization depending on how we see it go in certain situations. I do think though, now that there's a lot of big groups, there's actually companies that are, you know, specifically consulting in that one touch no haggle. To me as a consumer, just it kind of makes sense, right? So I think F&I managers, the role will change a little bit. I think that they're going to have to be spending a lot of time out in the floor, doing training, product training, right? They're still going to have to be there. But if I'm an F&I manager of tomorrow, I'm not just worried about what's my PVR. I'm worried about what's my penetration in the service department and how can I help service advisors maybe sell more? How can I help get people out there talking, whether it's salespeople out there with iPads? I'm worried about what's my average take rate on service contracts when I'm doing a follow-up program and mailing them to people and texting people after the fact. I think business managers are still going to be a vital role in the store, but I think they have to expand their mind to just what's my PVR to partnering at a higher level at the dealership and worrying about F&I protection and profitability in every aspect. Like I'm going to be going into BDC meetings and talking about what's your knowledge on F&I protection as part of the transaction? Are you guys explaining it appropriately instead of just having customers penciling themselves online without anything? Like that's going to be really, really important. Selling over the phone. Part of the Darwin platform is as an F&I manager, I can connect live to a customer. If we're going to keep our F&I revenue where it's at or hopefully grow it in the future, our F&I managers need to get more comfortable getting on the phone with a customer, right? Not being left out of a deal because I had somebody in my office and the spouse was 100 miles away, or it was an internet customer, or I just didn't have. So with our platform, I can literally connect to that consumer's cell phone or home computer in real time and let them see the menu. I'm not just talking about emailing them a PDF menu. I'm talking about here's live, drag and drop, sign, and move forward. So yeah, I feel like just opening up and being more flexible with that change, but more importantly, making yourself a more vital role in that store is going to be vital for not only the future of our software, but F&I managers in general.
I couldn't agree more. I think also this gives the aftermarket services companies and the agents or sales teams that actually go in now to these dealerships to add value beyond just providing a product and saying, we're going to train. They can train in this transformative nature of, it's not just, I'm going to raise your PVR $200 a copy. It's, I'm going to give you an ecosystem of how revenue could be earned and garnered utilizing these different digital retail platforms. So that transformation now needs to be part of the teaching acumen that's going to be transferred inside the store. But I think the other thing too, it's pay plan. Pay plan modification adjustment to reward for those types of transactions. That needs to be part of the dialogue as well.
Absolutely. Sure. I would argue that it has to start there.
Yeah.
Just knowing most of the people in the automotive industry,
right.
It's going to have to start there. You're going to have to give them the incentive and the reason to want to go out and be a bigger part. But I think they'll get there, and I think they'll understand. And now that software is really getting there and allowing it for it to happen, it just makes sense.
Great. Any other questions?
Do you see DMS providers adopting open source model going forward in terms of data integration? Yesterday I learned that CDK, for example, has this Fortellis platform. Yep. It's integrations marketplace, basically. Yep. Are there conversations taking place in the DMS industry as far as what does the future look like? Is there a Linux in this industry that everybody can work on to make experience better for the dealer as well as the customer and everybody in between?
Yeah, great question. Some DMSs, certain DMSs may be more open. Fortellis is certainly what I think is probably the best chance of doing that. you know, or chatting. I was actually with CDK in a previous life, and I was part of an advisory board when we first kind of had the Fortellis name and ideas years ago. To me, it's awesome. Like, the idea is awesome. Like, I could get a 15-year-old kid whiz that could create a software and put it on a, you know, like, it's like the Apple, yeah, I could create an app, and then millions of people could possibly buy it and benefit from it. And that same 15-year-old kid probably couldn't start a business like ours and really grow out. And so to me, that is really exciting potential technology to just drive, right, competition and innovation. And anytime that happens, everybody benefits, right? Dealers, right? Especially if it's open source,
right?
Because that has been been a dirty word over the last few years. But the fees and integration fees and everything that happen, it does make it tough for somebody to compete and sell at a number that's, you know, palatable for a dealer in certain software. So, yeah, to me, out of everything I've seen, that's probably that one's got a chance if everybody kind of gets behind it and you get the right providers jumping on board. So it's going to be pretty exciting to see what happens here.
Any other questions?
I do. So you kind of touched a little bit on, you know, you guys were talking about the pay plans in the dealership, and that's probably one of the things that really people should be looking at now to start changing, to be able to adopt in, you know, more technologies and different ways of doing things. What do you say when you are presenting to a dealer who like has the interest, but they're still stuck in their mindset, and they're still kind of, but okay, it sounds great, but, and so what do you say to those dealers to try to help get them to understand the importance of starting to adopt the change now so they're not left behind?
Yeah. You know, some people you're not going to be able to change. They're going to get forced, right? So we're lucky to have a lot of the, like I said, like the Don Flows of the world that are they always want to be on the, you know, the front line of innovation, and they're willing to take the chances, right, of change that they know that, hey, this might cost me some money in the short term, but long term we're invested in this process. Pay plans, you brought it up. I mean, it's always been one of those ones that, you know, it's like, you know, that's what they're going to concentrate on. It's human nature. You know, and speaking like, you know, specifically to that, it's like selling F&I protection in the service department. Like everybody's been talking about it for so long, right? And usually it's the common, well, we give the service advisor a bird dog of $100 if they tee something up, and then it's just, you know, maybe a few of them a month. And then you get to go into a store that has a full-time F&I manager in the service department. I get to see it firsthand, and this lady's selling 20 to 30 service contracts a month, right? And it's like, wow, why doesn't every dealership do this, right? But the F&I managers in the F&I office for the first few hours of the day, like doing maybe nothing, waiting for a delivery, and like 50 service customers just came through their store in the morning, and like there's a disconnect because who's getting paid? Why are they going to do it? Where's the focus? Yeah. What's the training? What's the this? So it does start with the dealer realizing, okay, what am I trying to accomplish? All right, well, if that's my ultimate goal, then yeah, pay plan is next, right? Because we have to pay the people to do it, and then you implement training and like technology behind it. But the first thing is just understanding, yeah, this is my goal. And you know, to every dealer's defense, there's a million things that they could be worrying about at any one time. But there are certain things like that just have always bugged me personally, like because you see it at one store, right? And they're making a lot of money, and it's going, and then this next store, they're like, okay, all you have to do is just do this one thing, right? And it just doesn't get accomplished. So I think it's up to everybody. Yeah. You know, our role is pretty cool because we get to go into a lot of dealers all across the country, right? And we just get to say, like, hey, this was working cool. You guys may want to try this out. And I think everybody will get there as they talk in 20 groups. And the innovators are out there innovating, and the technology providers are out there building the technology. So they'll start to understand, you know, they typically will do a good job finding the opportunity when it presents itself. But no, yeah, good question. It's a lot to think about.
Well, I would close with this: is that, you know, open source is a lovely concept. It's worked well in other industries, and something like you said that it's new for us. But I think open source communication amongst the vendors and suppliers in this in our industry, we can all work to make a better impact on that frictionless customer transaction. So, part of this speaker series really is just to start asking the questions and getting people involved and, be that beacon of change. So we appreciate Jeff coming in today and answering questions on digital retail. So thank you very much, Jeff.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.